are you feeling, Nicholas? Is it going okay?
Yeah, great. Happy. Happy is the word.
Good. You seem it. That's brilliant. That's the right answer. Let me just sort this out.
Oh my Lord, we're streaming on YouTube.
Right, I've got everything set up. All we need now are people. They're coming in thick and fast. So just so you know, Mike, we got about, well, I'll give you a little introduction to the course in a sec before we get going. But we got about 150 on service design, popular course. And then I extended the invitation to some of our Master of Research students. I can see a couple here are design products and industrial design engineering. You know, the people that actually do stuff. We had some interest from our fashion designers who are coping with a more, sustainable view on fashion. So I think you've got a friendly crowd here.
They look very friendly.
And they're all raring to get out there into the real world. We're about, well, our show is end of June and their exams are in about 3 or 4 weeks time, so they're all getting pretty nervous now.
Oh, wait till they find out wait till they find out what old people like us did with the world.
You're probably about to tell us, aren't you?
They're going to have questions for you, Clive.
Okay. I'm ready. Good. How are we doing? 31. I might start doing my brief introduction when we have about another 10 or so students, and just give it a few minutes. It always takes 3 or 4 minutes for people to come on. End of the day here and your morning out there. Okay, so what I'm going to do, Mike, I'm just going to give you our little introduction on the course and introduce you properly, and then we'll get going. So I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. There you are. Welcome everybody and all the people who are joining. It's lovely to see you. We're really honoured and privileged and excited to have Mike come and speak to us this evening for us, and of course, nice early morning for Mike in San Francisco, a city I know some of you know very well. Some of my students have come from San Francisco. I'm just going to give Mike an introduction actually to us, if you don't mind. As I mentioned, most of the people here, and this was started off as a come and talk to service design, but we've included people from beyond service design in products and fashion, everyone else. These are what my students look like on my first day a year and a half ago, just a bit more than that. September 2019, when I took over the course. The course is only 9 years old or so. We'd love to tell you more about it and answer your questions when we ask you questions later on in this session. Students from all over the place, a lot from UX and digital, a lot from product, architecture, management, social enterprises, social scientists. We have a Bollywood costume designer. We have everybody on the course, which is really interesting. Not everybody comes from design, and that's quite interesting too. Brings a lot to us. And of course, when our cohort graduated in June, they did it virtually. But I'm really delighted to say that June the 24th, we're going to be back in the Albert Hall with real mortarboards and all that funny gear we wear when you graduate. So the second years will have a proper send-off at the end of their 2-year master's course. When I joined the course, Mike, I asked everyone what they thought of it and what was the ethos. And I think it's worth sharing this with you because it sort of sets the tone for who we are, who your audience is. But the words that came out were interesting, and you might challenge us on them. But it was clear that you couldn't do service design, which is that user experience writ large, really, across systems and humanity, and different types of organizations. You can't do it unless you're really curious and courageous enough to tell people the truth. And then we say collaborative enough to actually do something about it. So the students describe themselves as dynamic, innovation is coming out of everything the RCA does, and we try and transform. We're not here to leave alone. I think that's why we're so keen to hear from you. We say we're very people-centered, we're about humans, and sometimes that's an individual, sometimes that's a community, sometimes it's society. And we're very concerned with systems, and especially the one we live on. So the students' work has been increasingly about the environment, sustainability, and recently replenish. How do you give back to the earth? Which is some kind of a new thing we're working on at the moment. And then purpose, what's our purpose? But we're here to listen, to be inspired. Oh, and there they were on Friday. A whole bunch of people actually turned up because they realized it was their last day on campus because of the way we work our sort of access to campus. So we are real people, Mike. So I'm going to stop sharing now when I find the right button, because I want you all turn on your cameras, please. Mike said to me, are these real people? Turn on your cameras and say, hello, Mike. Okay, we really exist. Look at that. That's better. That's what we wanted. I might take a picture of that if you don't mind.
What a smart looking crew.
Not bad, hey? Not bad. Not bad. And ready to change the world, we hope. So
You look very curious and ready to work.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for doing that. So listen, Mike, we're really delighted to have you here. Mike is being very innovative and transformational himself. He's got a video of his presentation, what he wants to say to us. He's going to do that over a video, okay? And it's probably going to take about half an hour. And then once that video has been shown, we are one-on-one with Mike. We can ask him any question. He can ask us any question. This is about interacting as best we can in this crazy virtual world. So be brave, be courageous, be curious, as I described you, and make sure you've got some good questions for Mike. I'm really looking forward to this session. Thanks again, Mike, co-founder of Mule, San Francisco design agency, written his first book, Design is a Job, which was a great epiphany for me. And then went on, of course, to write this book, Ruined by Design, with this marvelous label to all Amazon workers on the front, which made me smile enormously. I don't know if they made you take it off or not, Mike, but
no, they actually kept it. They, I was kind of surprised because I thought, well, this will be up for a day. The message that's printed right on the cover is for Amazon workers and how they have a right to unionize, and it's got the URL for the AFL-CIO's /form a union page that tells you how to do that. And I thought, oh, I added it to the cover, and I thought, well, this will be up for a day. And then it actually got written about. It got picked up in the New York Post, which is a horrible newspaper. And you're from the UK, you're familiar with trash newspapers. It's one of those. They interviewed some people at Amazon, and they were like, technically it's not breaking any rules, so God damn it, we're going to keep it. So they still suck. This is not a story about them being good people. They're horrible people. Anyway, thanks for that introduction, Clive.
Over to you. Cheers.
Wow, look at all these people. So curious, so ready to enter the world. I've got news. We haven't left much world for you to enter. Old men like me and Clive, we've pretty much, destroyed the best of it and had our way with it. So good luck with that. You should be murdering us in our sleep. I have a talk that I'm going to play for you. And like Clive said, it's recorded because, I'm stuck in my apartment, like many of you. And I tried to do it live once. And, the doorbell kept ringing and the neighbors upstairs were like, what are you doing in there? It's weird. So I just went off somewhere and recorded it. And now I just hit play. And so I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to come back, and then the fun really starts, because then we talk about it. And hopefully you'll have some questions for me. I might have some questions for you. There might be some stuff in the talk that you're like, this is bullshit. Please call me on it. I want to hear all that. I love seeing that curiosity was one of those building blocks for your school. And the first step to being curious is you got to admit that there's something you don't know. Otherwise, you can't be curious. And white guys like me, we have a big problem admitting that there's something that we don't know, because we like to think that we know everything. So we fail at curiosity, and it's so sad because there's so much out there that we could be like just learning about, that we've blocked off because male toxicity and crap like that. Anyway, let's watch a video. It's not fun. I'll tell you that right now. It's not fun, but there might be something in it. So let's do this sharing thing.
All good so far.
See a big black screen?
Yep, big black screen.
All right, I'm going to go away for a while.
Cheers. See you later.
Pleasant, unemotional conversation helps digestion. Father serves mother first, then daughter. The boys. Don't worry, fellas, you won't get left.
On Tuesday, June 16th, 2015, Donald Trump descended a golden escalator to the lobby of Trump Tower and announced that Mexicans were rapists. America laughed because the whole thing was ridiculous. Well, some of America laughed. Some of America didn't. Some of America decided this was excellent. Some of America decided this was just the kind of message they needed to hear. Trump was the immigrant took our jobs meme made pustulant flesh. Some of America, mostly white, mostly male, decided this was exactly what America needed. Because to grow up white and male within a system that's designed specifically for you to succeed and yet not succeed, well, that's embarrassing. And Trump was giving those white males an easy out. They could blame immigrants, which, let's be honest, a lot of those white males were already doing. But Trump was saying the quiet part out loud. And on November 8th, 2016, some Americans, mostly white, mostly male, took that out that Donald Trump was handing them, and they made him president of the United States. I'm an immigrant. My parents, along with my brother and I, we arrived in the United States on January 20th, 1970. I was 2 years old. I wasn't born here, but this is the only home I've ever known. So after Trump was elected, I joined the immigrant resistance, mostly behind the safety of a large, shiny computer screen. And I raised my voice along with the rest of my immigrant brothers and sisters in renouncing his xenophobic, racist bullshit. The first talk I wrote during the Trump administration was titled How to Fight Fascism. And it ended with a slide that said, made by an immigrant. A slide which I've copied over into every talk I've given since then. And I was very proud to stand defiantly in front of that slide at the end of my talks. I convinced myself that I was standing in solidarity with other immigrants in the crowd. And I was. But there was a word missing. because, yeah, I am an immigrant, but my lineage is a little more complex than that. I'm a Portuguese immigrant. My people were in shipping. And as Letty in Lovecraft Country so succinctly put it, that means slavery. If you're an African American, there's a very good chance that my ancestors and your ancestors crossed paths, and that your ancestors were free before meeting mine, but not after. My ancestors invented the Atlantic slave trade. The Portuguese rounded up free people, imprisoned them in forts, and packed them in ships. Portuguese vessels carried an estimated 5.8 million Africans into slavery, mostly to Brazil, but also to the United States. The first Portuguese came to America in the stolen bellies of stolen African women. And while historians, mostly Portuguese, will tell you that Portugal was a minor player by the time the Atlantic slave trade reached its zenith, it's kind of like saying that a fire isn't your fault because the match you used to light it's gone out. These are my people. They were in shipping. They were slavers. And if we're going to make a case for intergenerational trauma, I believe it's not only fair, but necessary to also make a case for intergenerational sin. We do not get a medal for solving a problem we had such a large hand in causing. I am telling you these things because it makes me uncomfortable to tell you these things. In her excellent book, Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent, Isabel Wilkerson makes a compelling argument that America is a caste system defined by color, and that color is an American invention. Before America, we were Fulani, we were Belgian, we were Irish, we were Kanuri, we were Congo, we were Polish, and yeah, we were Portuguese. But America made us black and white. America chained black people to the bottom, and it expanded and contracted the definition of white as needed to make sure that black people stayed on the bottom. One of the surprises of the 2020 presidential election was that Trump's percentage of immigrant votes actually grew. And by surprised, I mean that my non-immigrant friends were surprised. I wasn't surprised. Let's talk about immigrant racism. So look at me. I'm white. And I've certainly benefited from my skin color throughout my life. But that whiteness was a suit that I had to learn to wear. Because when my family moved to Philadelphia in 1970, they were moving into one of the most racist cities in America at the time, presided over by racist fuck-stained Mayor Frank Rizzo. And we moved into a small Portuguese community in a majority black neighborhood. And we moved into homes and businesses recently vacated by white flight. We came in as Portuguese. And we needed America to make us white because that is how America to find success, and we were here for success. And Frank Rizzo, well, he was happy enough to call us white when he needed our votes. So we hung the Rizzo re-election signs in our storefronts. And later we would hang the Reagan signs. And then eventually we would hang the Trump signs. And yeah, we crossed the street when Black people came our way. And we hired our own. And we adopted all the slurs. And we brought some of our own with us. Our goal was to achieve whiteness, which by America's definition meant hating Blackness and hating other immigrants. Every immigrant group that comes into America wants to be the last immigrant group through the door. Trust me, immigrants would rip the plaque off the Statue of Liberty faster than a Proud Boy at a Tiki Torch Black Friday sale. And every immigrant group knows that the secret to achieving whiteness is to patiently wait in the wings until the current whites believe Black people are catching up, at which point the books are open and the Irish are let in, or the Ukrainians are let in, or the Czechs are let in, or the Portuguese are let in. In America, whiteness is a reward for stepping on Black people's necks. So no, seeing that Trump had gotten more immigrant votes in 2020 than in 2016 didn't surprise me. After all, when I attempted to talk to my own family about his xenophobia, my mother's reply was, "Oh, he doesn't mean immigrants like us." There's always an immigrant group on deck for achieving whiteness. They're voting for their turn at bat. And my family did indeed vote for them. But when you say that immigrants don't vote in their own self-interest, that's not true. We are voting in our own self-interest. We understand how this country was designed to work. We're playing by the rules that you set. We did indeed learn it from you, Dad. I am telling you these things because it makes us both uncomfortable when I tell you these things. Let's talk about shame. I was recently having a conversation with a friend about how people we both know, and people who we believe to be good people, and they are, how those people continue to work at places like Facebook and places like Twitter, despite the overwhelming evidence that places like Facebook and Twitter are, not good places. We discussed the obvious suspects: good salaries, overwhelming student loan debt, fancy job perks. And all those things are true to some extent. But I believe the biggest reason that people stay in jobs like this is shame. Because once you admit your involvement in something terrible, you have to deal with your shame. And I'm not even talking about admitting your involvement to others. I'm talking about admitting it to yourself. To admit that you've spent years working on tools to dismantle democracy is a shameful thing. Especially if you've continued working on them long after the point where it was obvious that what you were working on was complicit in destroying democracy. The easiest way to keep shame at bay is to not admit those things are bad, which is one of the reasons companies distract you with things like good salaries and fancy job perks and swordfish in the cafeteria on Thursdays. Those perks are shinier than the shame. If you ever find yourself in Lisboa, in Portugal, and I encourage you to go because it's a lovely multicultural city now, you may find yourself staring at one of its marvels, the magnificent monument to its seafaring past, Os Descobrimentos. The monument points out over the Rio Tejo like a giant arrow, and it's adorned along the sides by action-posed statues of the great navigators of Portugal, my forefathers. This monument is a bauble. It's meant to take your mind off other things. Just 6 kilometers to the east of that monument, and I encourage you to walk because it's nice. It's a nice walk. You'll walk into the Pelourinho Velho. It's a public square, and it once served as Portugal's premier slave auction. Walk a kilometer to the northwest of that, and you'll end up at Rua do Poço dos Negros, which means Street of the Negro Pit. This is where my ancestors threw the lifeless bodies of stolen people once they'd exhausted them. Now, there's no monument in either of these places. In fact, there's no monument or museum in Portugal dedicated to its slaving past. We don't erect monuments to shame. In fact, our slavery past can best be summed up by this quote from Renato Epifanio, president of the International Lusophone Movement. Anyone who knows anything about Europe has to agree that Portugal is probably the least racist country in Europe. This can and should be one of our greatest causes of pride. It can't and it shouldn't. The smallest asshole at the asshole party is still at an asshole party. But let's go back to the United States, because I am telling you these things and making myself uncomfortable only to make myself feel better about how uncomfortable I'm about to make you. After all, we were slavers because there was a market for it. But the hand of the market isn't always invisible. It has fingerprints. Now, I'm white. But for the first 2 decades of my life, being an immigrant was my defining characteristic. The neighbors saw me as an immigrant. The other kids at school saw me as an immigrant. The officer at the unemployment office, where I'd go with my dad to serve as a translator, saw me as an immigrant. And coming home crying after getting my ass kicked after school, only to have my mother tell me, this is their country, not yours, made sure that immigrant was etched deeply into my foundation. Once I left the immigrant bubble to go to college, I got to put on my white suit. So on a college campus, I was now surrounded by people who I could choose to or not choose to reveal my immigrantness to. I'd achieved the dream. I'd climbed the caste system and claimed my whiteness. Suddenly, in my mind, everything that I achieved was a product of hustle, hard work, intellect, and it felt like you could get away with anything. Well, it felt great for a while until it didn't. This was right around the time that I found out that, yes, indeed, although I was an immigrant, the history of my own people was a little extra than most. It wasn't talked about at home or in the community where I grew up. And it was during a conversation with a Black classmate in college. We were talking about where we'd each come from. And I mentioned I was an immigrant. He said, no shit, where from? I said, Portugal. And I saw his face change. And I saw his body language change. And I asked him, well, what's up? And he said, oh, you don't know? Well, I didn't. We didn't have Wikipedia back then. We didn't talk about this stuff. And he told me. And we kind of both avoided each other after that, unsure of how to handle it. I'm sure I didn't handle it well at all. That was shame. As an immigrant, you get to be excited about America's future while also kind of taking a mulligan on its past. But as a Portuguese immigrant, well, my people were in shipping. We're the foundation of America's past. There's a line in Ijeoma Oluo's amazing book, So You Want to Talk About Race, that I've used in essays and talks before, and it bears repeating here. If you are white in a racist society, you're a racist. If you're a man in a sexist society, you are sexist. By which she means that people who look like me get these privileges regardless of whether we want them or not. And I'm quoting this line again because the first time I read it, my reaction to this was that this obviously did not apply to me. How could it? I'm so woke. I put up a slide saying that I'm an immigrant at the end of my talks. I'm pulling out this quote one more time because of how deeply uncomfortable it made me when I first read it. It covered me in shame because, of course, the line applied to me. The first time I read it, I spent the next 20 pages of the book attempting to read what she'd written, but it wasn't sinking in. It wasn't sinking in because I kept going back to that line. I kept thinking about it. And I couldn't hear anything else she was saying to me because I was spending all of my energy going back to cover this shame that her words had awoken in me, and deflecting that shame to keep those words from hitting home. And I'm ashamed of how long that took, because once I accepted them, I could actually hear what else she had to say. I had to acknowledge my own discomfort and my own shame before I could hear that. And that's when the work begins. And I'm telling you this because now is the time for people that look like me to embrace that discomfort. Now is the time to be uncomfortable. In 20 years of running our own studio, we have hired exactly one Black person. Now, I could go on and on about the pipeline, and I could go on and on about how you can only hire who applies and yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, once all of those excuses are gone, you are left with a very concrete truth. We have hired exactly one Black person in 20 years. That's an undeniable fact. And it's a fact that makes me very uncomfortable because uncomfortable is where we need to be. It's also a fact that most of the companies in our industry are no better. You have not hired enough Black people either. And if seeing this is making you uncomfortable, great. Oh, but Mike, isn't this a quota system? Maybe. But this definitely is. Believing that every white dude that walks through the door is qualified by default, that is definitely a quota system. And it's the longest running quota system in world history. You said Black Lives Mattered. On March 13th, 2020, Breonna Taylor was asleep in her bed when 3 Louisville violence workers busted into her house and murdered her in her own home. And they got away with it. On May 25th, George Floyd was murdered by Minneapolis violence workers. He was handcuffed, he was thrown to the ground, and a violence worker lodged his left knee on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And George Floyd used what breath he could muster to tell the surrounding violence workers that he could not breathe, almost 30 times. How many times does someone need to tell you that you are killing them? How many times did the surrounding violence workers hear it and ignore it? And they got away with it too. This is America working as designed. This is the caste system that was designed not just by America, but in order to create America. White on top, black on bottom. A caste system that was systematically enforced, first by slavery, then by Jim Crow and the Klan, redlining, restrictive covenants, police departments, and every newspaper headline about the loss of property over the loss of human life. And our government itself, which attempted a coup by throwing out votes in majority black cities of Detroit, Atlanta, and Philadelphia. And when that didn't work, a racist mob, spurred on by an American president, invaded the Capitol carrying a white supremacist flag. This is who we are. America is so addicted to its racism that most conversations, even and especially white liberals' conversations about healing, still revolve around pardoning Trump and finding common ground with his base, which is like treating a bullet wound by polishing a gun. On Wednesday, we were thanking Black women for saving the Republic, and by Sunday, we were extending an olive branch to people who think they should be allowed to own those same Black women. And in the summer of 2020, part of America took to the streets, spearheaded by Black Lives Matter, who in the middle of a pandemic managed to organize millions of people safely so they were masked and socially distanced in cities and towns around the country. And those people were met by violence workers as well. And in the wake of those protests, companies and organizations and corporations posted pronouncements in support of Black Lives Matter. Some promising donations, some promising to change their culture, and some promising both. Some telling you how woke they were, and some letting you know they would have voted for Obama a third time. And beware, some of them think they just did. And while we could spend forever debating how many of those pronouncements were cynical, probably more than 0%, and how many were genuine, which is probably less than 100%, for our purposes, The important part is that they did it and that they did it publicly, which in the business is what we call a receipt. Now is a great time to ask the people and the companies and the organizations who made those pronouncements what their next step is. It's a great time to hold them accountable. And it's a great time for people who look like me to hold other people who look like me accountable. It will make us uncomfortable. Let it. You said Black Lives Mattered. Now prove it. The future will bring white men like me with stupid hot takes like this one and even stupider solutions. We cannot seem to help ourselves. It's what we do. Like colonizers with smallpox blankets, we show up expecting medals to solve the problems that we created. And we will always look to solve those problems to our own benefit. We hope to profit from the disease and the cure. Some of the white folks helping to pull down racist statues thought they were clearing space for statues of themselves. The truth is that I hope we are done idolizing individuals, because individuals will always let you down. We, people who look like me, do not get to speak for people whose ancestors we silenced. We get to listen. We get to stop hogging the space. Space wasn't ours to begin with. We stole it. Time to give it back. We need to be uncomfortable. And I'm talking in praise of discomfort, not because it's fun, but because discomfort is where we need to be. For years, for decades, for centuries. If you look like me, you got to live in a world that was very specifically designed to make you comfortable. The fact that you, individually, didn't achieve success in that world doesn't mean it didn't exist. It means you couldn't score from third on a double. Now you can turn that shame and that discomfort into rage, as I have in the past, honestly, and as so many Trump voters did, or you can own it. You can claim it because it's yours. And in so doing, you can keep from passing it on to the next generation. You can be a better ancestor than the ones you got. You can be a better ancestor than the ones I got. Now, there will be a role for people who look like me, but it'll be a role that we're really unaccustomed to. It'll be about listening rather than speaking, giving before we start taking, and it'll be as part of a community. And if we're lucky, we'll have as much of a chance to succeed as anyone else does. And the community's welfare will be the most important barometer to success, not our own. If we're lucky, people will treat us better than we've treated them. It'll make us uncomfortable, and that's a good start. Thank you. Hello. That was fun. That was fun.
It's amazing. We got some questions people are raising their hands already. Shall we do
All
it?
right. You run the show, Clive.
Well, first of all, thank you. That was extraordinary journey you took us on.
That's very kind of you. Thank you.
I'm hoping there's loads of questions. I got loads of questions, but I go last. So I saw Joy. Joy, were you going to ask a question? Is that right?
Yeah, I have a question. I was actually raising my hand to show the clapping emoji up here.
Oh, I see.
But I also do have a question.
Hello, Joy.
Hello, Mike. I follow you on Twitter, so it's really cool to see.
Oh, I'm very sorry about that. You shouldn't.
Yeah. But I was kind of wondering, like, about your thoughts on the role of shame as like a beginning to trigger action, to catalyze, new ways of looking at it. Like, what do you think? Do you think shame should be always present in this journey? Do you think it should fade away? Like, should it, like, what do you think about its transformation over time?
I think it works. I think shame works. I was also raised Catholic. I'm an alumni now. So, shame is part of my foundation. It's in there whether I want it or not. But we've seen, we shamed people into not smoking anymore in the course of my lifetime. That was shame that did that job. I don't think that there's one blanket way to change people. Let me put it that way. I think shame is a tool. I think with the right type of people, it's the right type of tool to use. I think you need to know when you're using it for good. Like if you have a goal in mind, and I think I can shame this person into listening to this or into thinking about, their behavior, then fine. If it's just a matter of shaming people for the sake of shaming people, well, that's not goal oriented. And but if there's an outcome that it helps you get to, then yes, feel free. Shame away. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Thanks, Joy. Great question. Now, did I see some other hands up? Sorry, hit the hand thing or just jump in if you want to ask a question. I can see Alessandro wants to ask a question, so come join us, Alessandro.
Right. Okay.
Hello, Alessandro.
Hello, Mike. Nice presentation. I wanted to ask a question regarding the entire ancestral responsibility aspect. And I do agree with the fact that, yes, we have to keep into considerations what our cultures, our backgrounds, our history, what our people did. Hell, I know about it. My people invented fascism, so I know something about it.
Oh, who are your people?
Italian. I'm Italian.
Oh.
So I do agree that there are some dark aspects that we are held accountable for dark moments in history. But what do you answer to the argument that some people make, yet where they say, yes, I do agree that what my ancestor did is wrong, but it's also wrong to hold me accountable for them when I clearly wasn't even there. If I would have been against them if I was, but I had no control over it.
Oh man, so there's so much to deal with there. For one, let's deal with the last thing that you said. I would have been against it if I was there, because recent history has given us a perfect example of where all of the people who said I would have been against it if I was there, like, okay, so now it's happening. Welcome. Mm-hmm. So here we have a fascist takeover of America. It's time to put what you just said into practice, and yet so many people didn't. Many people didn't. We have genocide going on right now in Palestine. Where are all the people who said, "Oh, hey, this wouldn't be happening on my watch," but here it is happening on your watch. So why aren't you doing anything? So when people say that to me, it's usually, I mean, when I hear that, it's usually horse shit, because there's this idea that all of these terrible things happened in the past, and if I could somehow transport myself in a time machine, they wouldn't have happened. And yet we take a look at what's happening in the present, and it's like, in some places, an even bigger shit show than anything we've done in the past. And we're not doing anything about it. And I include me in that. I mean, it's not like I'm booking a plane trip to Palestine right now to go fight alongside them. I'm a coward. I mean, here I am doing this little talk on Zoom to a bunch of students, you know, rah, rah, go fight, you know, behind, you know, the safety of a Zoom screen. But, you know, the whole point here is to acknowledge the shit that we did and deal with it and deal with it, and, you know, realize that that's part of our past, and and stop defending it at one point. So I've been doing this talk for, I think, since January now, and I've been setting up these events online where I have special guests come, and they, you know, I play the talk and then they talk to me afterwards. And I did one with a Portuguese designer, and it was scheduled so that, you know, folks could from Portugal, who live in Portugal, could come in the evening. Wow, that was the most defensive audience I've ever had. And these are the people who were willing to come. These were the people who were willing to listen. But, you know, at one point I asked them, like, hey, so what do you think that we owe these people whose, you know, nations we destroyed and ancestors we raped and stole and sold and separated from each other? What do you think we owe them? And, you know, they got very silent. And then finally somebody said, oh, we owe them our respect. And I was like, that's shit. That's shit. Like, I mean, talk about like the very bare minimum. I mean, we owe them money, for one thing. We owe them their land back. And you know, we don't really get to decide what we owe them. They get to decide what we owe them. We have done some shit. And you know, this here, fun fact, this talk actually was inspired by a conversation that I was having with a friend of mine who's an English immigrant here in the US. And we were just having a friendly conversation, and all of a sudden I brought up the British Museum, and holy shit, he went nuclear. He got so upset. How dare I bring up the British Museum? And then he starts talking about all of the shit that the Portuguese did, and your people did stupid things too. Like somehow those evened out. Like, hey, we're both supposed to be very quiet about this stuff. But he just got incredibly defensive about it. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to put the Portuguese shit out there. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk, because this is part of, you know, my history. These are my ancestors. We did this shit. And, you know, when you know, the Portuguese folks got a hold of this talk, the stuff that they were saying on Twitter was, oh, you know what? Here's my favorite. It was just a little slavery. It was just a little. It was just the tip of slavery. We weren't that bad. Well, we certainly weren't as bad as the Belgians. You know, crap like that. And you know, then there were appalling things like, well, we made those people's lives better, which I don't even know how that can come out of your mouth. But the excuses that and you know, my own family in Portugal won't talk to me after seeing this talk. Because I'm a traitor. I've betrayed their heroes. Everyone in that monument is a Portuguese hero. They sailed seas that had never been sailed before. Like, really? Really? Are you sure about that? And here's the thing that I didn't mention. I don't think I mentioned this in the talk. That monument was built by fascists. So why people would want to defend a statue about colonialism built by fascists is crazy beyond me. You knock that down, and that's two good things you do.
I'm going to bring someone else in now. There's so much we could talk. We got our own problems in Britain about suddenly realizing how involved we were. We thought we were the saviors of slavery, and turns out that was fake news. I'm going to ask Ahad Mahmood. You've had your hand raised for a while. Ahad, do you want to come in and ask your question?
Hey, yeah, thanks so much. So my question is,
Hello,
like,
Ahad.
Hi. So you're very careful about your words, and you rightfully equate like 16th, 17th century shipping to the slave trade. But then throughout the rest of your presentation, you continue to use the word shipping in terms of your family business. So I'm kind of curious as to why you chose to use that rather than slavery.
That's a great question. Thank you. Because in the US, that's used as a euphemism. So when, like old US families with, old wealth talk about where the wealth came from, they'll say, oh, my family got its money from shipping. And, with a nod and a wink, like we all know what that means. But it's a euphemism.
Amazing.
Thank you for the question.
Alex has asked in the chat, hello, Mike, do we need to create a new definition of human being / human rights?
No, because we would spend about 40 years trying to do that. There would be like 17 committees set up, and like the UN would just subcommittee this thing to death. UNESCO would get involved. At some point, the UK would have some vote that nobody took seriously and that ended up destroying their country about it. I think that was a joke, by the way. Boy, did you guys screw yourselves. Anyway, I think, we have fine definitions of human rights and human beings. We just need to follow them. We just need to uphold them.
Brilliant. Thanks.
I love the question.
Yeah,
But,
it's a big one. It's a big one. We've got a couple of other hands raised. Anchit, hi. Do you want to come in? Hello there.
Hi, thanks, Mike, for the talk. That was quite.
Hello, Anchit.
Hi. So one of the things that we often discuss as designers in our studio is like the act of not choosing sort of makes us complicit, but the kind of system that we have, so for example, WhatsApp is just reversing it's revising its terms of conditions, and we use WhatsApp, we use Facebook, we use Twitter. So in those scenarios, do we really have a choice? Do we have a choice to not choose? And even for a lot of people who are working for these companies, do they really have a choice?
Yes.
What is that choice?
Yes. You always have a choice. Hold on a second. I'm not minimizing what you're saying, but I think it's really important for us to understand that we always have a choice in what we do. Sometimes it's not a good choice. Sometimes it's not an easy choice. Sometimes it's a choice between, I'm going to do this job or I'm going to pay rent. I cannot get mad at somebody who chooses to pay their rent and feed their family. However, I think that there are a ton of people who hide behind that bullshit. Like if you're working at Facebook and making 250 grand a year and have been doing that for 3 years, you are not Jean Valjean. You are not one loaf of bread away from your family dying of starvation. And those are most of the people who I interact with here in this city are people who are doing very, very, very well. People who have other jobs that are available to them. Maybe they'll only make 80% of what they're making now. But, they use that defense. Oh, I have to feed my family. And, the sentence that's the part of the sentence that's always missing from what they're saying is in the manner in which I've become accustomed. I have a right to earn a living in the manner of which I've become accustomed. I can't quit my job at Facebook because I'm in line for a Tesla Cybertruck. And, you know, then I wouldn't be able to afford my Tesla Cybertruck. That's most of the shit that I hear around here. And I don't know what the labor situation in the UK is, and by labor I mean, you know, workers, not the party. But if you work at a place like that and you're being asked to, you know, do work that undermines, you know, human rights and democracy and things like that, and if you haven't attempted to unionize your workforce, I have no patience for you, because that is available to every worker in the US. And it's not an easy road to take, but I think we are at the point where that is a necessary road to take. And I think the problem here, especially the problem with Silicon Valley, and you may be familiar with this quote, it's from John Steinbeck, about how America is a nation of temporarily embarrassed millionaires. So every American or every worker in Silicon Valley believes that they're, you know, one stroke of luck away from being, you know, a millionaire or a billionaire, I think we should probably say at this point. And any time that I start behaving like a worker, anytime I start behaving like I'm part of a labor force, then that undermines this belief that I have that I'm, you know, just one step away from being rich. And, you know, this is how Silicon Valley has been run by design. This is not an accident. I mean, we've, you know, been enticing people with, you know, stock options and get rich quick schemes for decades. And we've convinced our labor force that they're not actually a labor force. And but that's that we've seen some changes in that in the last few years. There are companies beginning to unionize. And if you take a look at all of the money and all of the effort that Amazon recently poured into keeping their warehouse workers from unionizing, you don't do that unless you're scared of something. If you want to know whether unions work, look at how much money corporations pour into them, pour into stopping them.
Mike, we've got three other hands up. I'm going to ask James and then Sharanya and then Howard. So get yourselves ready. And I think it's quite a nice segue, because one of the relationships we have at Royal College of Art is, interestingly, with London Business School. And we actually take design there and they bring economics to us. And so James, our next hand raised, our next question asker is actually from the sort of associated work we do with London Business School. So hello, James, welcome.
Thanks, Clive, and thanks, Mike. And yeah, there's no hiding here. Definitely from LBS. But I really enjoyed the talk, and I found it very shocking and unexpected in a good way. And I just wanted to, I guess, follow up on one of the points that you mentioned earlier around what we owe these peoples. And you said that we owe them their land back and we owe them money. And I think I've heard that argument to start, by the way. To start, exactly. And I agree, you know, there's a starting point that's necessary. But I think when one steps back and thinks about the cyclicality of all this, you know, it doesn't just stop with the Portuguese and the sort of colonialization and the shipping, as you refer to it. You know, where does the buck stop? Because, you know, do we get the Romans to give back Sicily? Do we get the Vikings to, you know, pay back the English, you know, or modern day Scandinavia? And I think if you can't draw a line at some point definitively, and you can't give a clear monetary figure to what that constitution should be in a way that makes some kind of sense, then where do you go? And I'm just interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for the question, James. And by the way, I get that question every time I do this talk, and you ready for the shocker? It's always from a white dude. Every
Happy
time.
not to disappoint.
Thank you for that. I don't know. I don't know. And, you know, I love not knowing, but because, you know, I'm not the smartest person in the room. And, you know, white boy me doesn't get to solve this problem. But, you know, when we come together as people, we've managed to solve some pretty big problems. And I think, you know, if we come together as people, I think we can solve problems like this. I don't think there's going to be a definitive answer to this. I don't think we're actually going to start, you know, giving land back willy-nilly to people. I don't, but, you know, here's what I do know. The US has paid reparations twice in the past, if I'm correct, twice in US history. And I'm sorry, I don't know UK history. The first time they paid reparations was when they paid Southern plantation owners reparations for the slaves they lost. Which, holy shit. The second time they paid reparations was, and this didn't happen until I believe the 80s, they paid reparations for Japanese Americans who were interned in internment camps during World War II, which again doesn't make good, but it's a start. If you can get it together to pay slave owners for the loss of property, I think you can do the math on how much labor has been done generationally, and begin to at least atone for that. I don't know what that is. I don't know how to solve that. It's a big problem. It's a complicated problem. It's also a problem that, you know, just tackling would do a lot of healing. And I think it's important that we start that work. You know, America has this habit of, you know, claiming that problems are too hard to fix, such as, you know, healthcare, too hard to fix, which is weird because we're the only civilized nation in the world that hasn't managed to figure it out yet. Gun control, too hard to fix, unsolvable, says the only country in the civilized world that hasn't figured out how to solve it yet. Our ridiculous demand of exceptionalism forbids us from looking at how anybody else solves a problem and learning from them. We just pretend it doesn't exist.
Brilliant. Thank you. Sharanya, would you like to take the floor?
Hi, thank you so much for what you shared.
Hello, Sharanya.
Hi. I'd like to say that it was a great birthday gift for me because my birthday is tomorrow and you've given
Happy
me
birthday.
And yes, I feel like I'm going into my next year very wise.
Yay.
I wanted to actually comment on what you said, what you were talking to Alessandra about, and about like shame. And I was wondering about the, you know, like culture, basically casual insensitivity. So a lot of time acts like employing somebody who's Black is quite tokenistic, but there's not much thought that goes into it. And I wonder if, as a person of color, I am enabling it in some way as well, because I was thinking about how it's very difficult to feel shame unless you've actually felt that experience. As service designers, we're meant to be quite empathetic, but empathy is different from having lived and felt that sort of pain. And, you know, I think I came from a place of privilege as a person of color. I think I didn't realize I was a person of color till I had someone do, you know, be racist towards me. And then my whole perspective has, you know, changed. But I wonder if people like me who've not felt or lived that history are enabling people who are being insensitive without realizing we're doing it.
I think you just answered your own question and magnificently, in a way better way than I could have. I which you should have her on to do a talk, Clive. She's great. And I mean, the thing is, we don't know what we don't know, right? Like, I'm a 53-year-old white man. I have said some shit that I should not have said.
Mhm.
You know, it would be, you know, claiming anything otherwise is just, you know, an egregious lie. And you know, with every employee that I've hired, and you know, they get younger as you go, all of them has had to call me aside at some point and say, hey, you can't say that anymore. And oh, who's anybody here, have you people heard of base camp over there? Has anybody been following the base camp drama?
What the fuck?
That's a yes.
Who said that?
Hey. I mean,
Daniela?
Yeah, Daniela. For you, it's Daniela, you know.
Tell us about the base camp drama.
Well, it's very complicated because base camp and I think Jason Fried, they're sort of these demigod figures in terms of startups, you know, like different ways of working. And then they wrote this post that they sent out to their employees that you shouldn't talk about politics. Work is work. Try to keep it at home.
Hold on. I got to correct you. They posted that publicly, and that's how their employees found out. That's really important.
So not even through an email first, just like
no.
Find out from Twitter.
What happened? So they, I mean, they're like, okay, you can't, no more political talk at the company. And, you know, first of all, there's like, okay, what defines political talk? If, you know, I feel like I'm, you know, not getting the opportunities that I should be getting here because everyone in management is white and I'm a person of color, and I point that out, is that political talk? It's stupid. It's stupid to have. And then it's like, and then they said, okay, no more paternalistic benefits. Like, whoa, announce yourself, colonizing daddy. Paternalistic benefits? That's a hell of a phrase. And then one of their other points was we are not a social impact company. Every company is a social impact company. Every designer who chooses where and how to use their labor is committing some sort of social impact. That's ridiculous. So they did some digging. As to why the hell is this happening, and they found out that there was a long time ago. This company's been around forever. A long time ago, somebody had started a list of funny customer names. You know, it's just like a way to blow off steam. And most of the funny names on this list were foreign, or I'm sorry, foreign sounding. You know, not, you know, like your typical Mayflower names. And as time went on, more and more employees were like, this is feeling creepy. Like, you know, stuff that was like, okay, haha, funny, you know, 15 years ago, you know, we now realize, whoa, that's not really as funny as we thought it was. And, you know, I've gone through this growth myself, because I told jokes in my youth that I wouldn't dare tell today, because now I know better. And, you know, I've been lucky enough that I've had somebody who was kind enough to tell me, hey, you can't say that, and then tell me why. And, you know, God bless old white men for having people willing to smack them upside the head once in a while, because they made me a better person. And I learned a lot from my younger employees who were willing to do this. But the truth is that we have all done shit like this in our past. And all the base camp dudes needed to do was, yeah, wow, we thought that was funny back then. Hell, were we wrong? We are never, we're just going to admit it. We're just going to own that discomfort that we're feeling right now. We're going to admit it. We're going to admit that we did this. We're going to admit that we now know, maybe later than we should have, but fine. Now we know it. This is horrible. we apologize. What do we need to do to make up for this? We'll do it. But instead, they felt that shame, and rather than owning it, they kicked it back. And I mean, honestly, that's the whole crux of the talk. When the shit that we've done in our past comes back on us, and we all have it, we all have that shit in our past. When it comes back on it, do you admit it? Do you say, wow, yeah, I did that. That was horrible. Or do you kick it back and do you blame the person who's alerting you to this, and you learn nothing? Which is why, I mentioned it's so great that you have curiosity as one of your founding principles, because you can't be curious unless you can first admit there's something you don't know, and there's something you could still learn. And I think, when I was young, I used to think, boy, I can't wait till I'm older and know stuff. And I'll be wiser and things like that. And then as you get older, you realize, what wisdom actually is being able to admit how stupid you are. And all of the and that there's and all of the things that you don't know are just fucking adventures waiting to happen. And I mean, you can be curious about all that stuff, and you can find out what that is, and you actually get smarter, and you get a better understanding of the world, and you become a better human being by admitting you don't know shit.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna give you a couple more hands that are raised, and then there's an interesting point from Anchit I'd love to come back to, and then we'll probably give you a break. But Howard, if you don't mind being patient, I'd love to invite Alexandra from our Masters of Research program. Hello, Alexandra, how are you?
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hi, Alexandra.
Hi there. Mike, I would like to maybe focus on one point which you also mentioned, curiosity and also listening. You mentioned that, when we shame person into listening, then, shaming kind of works. And listening, and that's also like, Sharanya mentioned, is combined with creating empathy, what we designers should do. And I just wanted to, bring in the point of the power of listening. When we start listening, I think then we can open up to people, that we can, hear stories of people, who, in various senses, context we maybe have heard, or like, ancestors also did. And that this is a kind of a first step to, to come together and to, step back and use this curiosity to learn more, to understand more, and also understand the other person's side. And I just wanted to like to hear your thought on, how we as like the design practice as a larger pool, let's say, can utilize this power of listening to actually work towards, getting maybe more curious, and also tackle what you talked about.
I love that question. And let me expand the part that you said about designers, because I think this helps us as human beings. This helps us in every relationship that we have, just listening to other people. White men have developed this amazing skill that they use instead of listening, called waiting for their turn to talk. Maybe a little bit. I'll wait a little bit. Okay, I've waited long enough. But it's like we don't listen to what people have to say. And we need to get better at that. And part of that is because I think, sometimes other people start talking and it feels like a threat to us. Like, why is their voice in the air and not mine? They're getting attention when I'm not. One of the first things that we learned, and God, this was such an invaluable lesson. When we first started our little company, we were pitching a job, and we were up against another little company that we were all friends. We were all friends with each other. So both companies were bidding on this job, and both companies went in and pitched, and we ended up getting the job. And I waited about a month into the job, and I finally asked. I felt comfortable enough asking one of the people, client side, at one point. So hey, so the other people that you were looking at, they're real good too. So I'm just curious because I'm trying to get better at this stuff. Why'd you hire us? Because during the pitch meeting, the other people talked and talked and talked about all of the awards that they had won and how good they were at what they did, and went and wouldn't shut up about their former clients. And you asked us what was wrong and then sat back and listened. And it was such a great lesson to get early on in our career. And it really taught us that people need to be heard. And if you're a problem solver, what the hell are you solving if you're not listening to what the problem is? You got to let people talk. And this is for the other white fellows in the audience today, because this is how we can do our part. When we're at work and there's somebody who's not a white person, a white male talking, and they get interrupted, this is where you come in and turn to them and say, you need to shut up. You need to shut up because I need to hear what Alexandra was saying. That's our role in this. Thank you for the question, Alexandra.
Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you. And
we've got Howard, I'm going to ask you, you've had your hand raised a long time, and then Serene, I'd love you to come in with your point, and then I'll probably wrap the whole thing up if that's okay.
I'm just getting started. Clive,
oh, wow, right, we could go all night. It's fantastic. Howard, hello, you wanted to ask a question.
Yes, so really, it was a very inspirational talk. I was trying to be like as subtle as I can be, because I know that some of the question I'm going to ask is not going to be comfortable for a lot of people. But as a part of people, a group of people who has, let's say, their language erased from their generation, and there's also that sense of East Asian, sort of like East Asian style shame that we should felt. That, but then it's really not there because of the nationalistic view of our countries and that kind of stuff. So how would you take this kind of like effort to really just replace people's language with a better language in some sense to achieve that, to achieve progress? So what's your take on that?
I think that's a wonderful thing to talk about. I want to hear you talk about it more. I don't have a take. I mean, this is you're describing a problem to me, and I would rather hear more about your description of the problem than, come up with a knee-jerk solution for it. Tell me more about what's going
on. Okay. So
get specific.
I'm a Taiwanese, and I don't speak Taiwanese. I think that's the problem. Yeah.
What do you speak?
I speak Mandarin right now.
So tell me what happened there, because I don't know this.
So there were some political situations, and then in order to let people inside a specific country to talk to each other, the government decided that they need to make everyone speak the same language. And when I see it, it's kind of like when you go to America, you sort of like, the English is very important. Like the way that I'm speaking English right now, it's some sort of like, kind of like, it can relate to that. So yeah, so the language has been kind of like replaced. And then if you're speaking a language that you're not supposed to speak, you get punished, you get You get downgraded. You don't get to have all the good stuff. You don't get to be in the government. You simply don't get to be anywhere, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I do feel like that this is some kind of like something that we can really relate to, especially, because of this entire America and UK and how the education works behind it. I know it's kind of like going to make some people uncomfortable, and I know that a lot of Taiwanese people here will want me to ask about it. And that's just be more specific as me, a person who really just don't feel like it is the right thing to keep on speaking Mandarin in some sense. How should I really navigate my guilt, my own share of shame? Because I think it's something that has been bothering us for a long time. Yeah.
Why do you feel guilty about this?
I feel guilty because Taiwan is an immigrant country as well. Like either Taiwanese or Mandarin are not supposed to be there in the first place. And this kind of like identity struggle has been something that has been very serious for us. So yeah, there is a sense of shame, but then we don't seem to be able to locate it. Like, where exactly is the shame? I know that probably this question is too hard for you to answer because yeah.
Well, I don't have an answer, but I'm fascinated by the story because this is a story that I don't know, and I want to know more about it. I will say that everyone is entitled to their language, and everybody is entitled to their identity. And if somebody takes away your identity, they've committed an act of violence on you. And they're the ones who should be ashamed, not you.
But then if I don't speak that language, a lot of progress will be lost. The society cannot move forward. There will be barriers between people. How should we balance that?
I don't know. That is a tough one.
Oh, thanks I know it's a really difficult topic for you to raise, and I appreciate you raising it for us.
It's an incredibly difficult topic. It's also incredibly important. And, I want to be honest with you because, I mean, there's too many white men in the world who knee-jerk answers and say, oh, you need to do this because they want to sound smart and they want to be, invited back to talking at schools. And I think it's important to admit, like, holy shit, I have no idea how to solve that. But I do know that if we want to come up with a solution to something like that, first we need to understand the problem, and that means listening to the people who are facing that problem, and getting a better understanding of it. I don't want to lose a language, and I don't want you to lose your identity. That sounds horrible. I think we've lost too much already. I don't want to lose any more.
Thanks.
And I'm sorry I couldn't give you a more solid answer. But maybe I can give you some confidence to reach out and find other people who are experiencing this. And because you can come up with a much better solution than I can.
Thanks for that.
And I just wrote something down that I need to go learn more about. So thank you for that.
And Howard, I think we'd be really interested in listening more and understanding that. I think what Mike's just said, it could be really good for us all to do that with you. So let's take something from this. Serene has asked a question on chat that struck me as really interesting, and it might be a nice way of sort of winding this up. Serene mentioned that in a talk she heard you do 2 years ago, something really struck her, or stuck with her, I should say. Designers needing to learn to say no and ask why. And she's wondering if you could share a little bit more about that with us, with this audience.
Two most important tools in a designer's toolbox are those two little words. Without those, you're just a pair of hands. So if you are given a problem to solve, why are we solving this problem? Why does this problem need to be solved? who is being, I mean, question everything until you fully understand it. And then once you have a full understanding of the problem, you have to ask yourself, is this a problem that I want to solve? Is this a problem that actually helps society move forward? Or is this just a bunch of libertarian douchebag billionaires trying to wrest more money from people at the who can least afford it? In which case, no, I will not solve this for you. You have the right to do that. Not only do you have the right to do that, you have the responsibility to do that as a designer. You are embarking on a career as a professional, somebody who is trained to do a thing that only you can do. Think of the other professionals that you interact with in your life and think about how you expect them to behave. Think about the level of expertise and the level of craft and the level of advice that you expect from other people who are professional. Like, for example, you go to a doctor, right? You go to a doctor and, you want to know that the doctor knows what she's doing. You want to know that they're, capable of doing this task. And then you also want to know that, they're not going to do this task in a crappy way. And, just because there's some hospital administrator breathing down her neck saying, I need you to send everybody through an MRI machine so that we can make some more money. You want to know that your doctor isn't doing that. You want to know that your doctor is saying, I'm not going to send my patients through that. I'm not going to, prescribe all of my patients opioids because it helps you make more money. I'm not going to schedule my patients for unnecessary surgery because, the hospital is in a fiscal crisis. You want to make sure that you have a doctor who is working for you and who is looking out for your interests. And you also want to know that, if you're some weirdo who says, hey, I want you to stitch my thumb to my forehead, your doctor's going to say, I am not going to stitch your thumb to your forehead. So you want to know that you're going to a doctor who can push back. That's who you are as a designer. You need to behave like that. You need to behave like somebody who understands the power of what you do and understands that, when you use it for good, it's amazing. And when you use it for bad, it's really bad. And you also need to understand, because you're all about that, you're all going to go out there, you're all going to go get jobs. You need to remember who you work for. You do not work for the people who sign your checks. You work for the people who are affected by the stuff you make. They're the people you work for. You think about how that work is affecting them, and you work so that it improves their lives, no matter what the people who are writing your checks ask you to do. That help?
Thank you, Mike. It's been amazing conversation. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. Thanks, Mike, for bringing so much energy to every single one. It's been a real special experience, actually. I feel the people on this call, I don't know about you, I feel like we're sort of part of a team now. We've had this experience.
See, I can't help myself.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry I cut you off, Clive. He got such a good group here. Such a good group.
I think they're amazing. And I think they're going to do amazing things. And to be honest, I think they're probably going to do slightly better because of this talk. I really hope so.
Every day I'm amazed that young people don't kill us. So if this helps to at least move me to the back of the line when young people realize the horror that we've inflicted on the world and start setting up guillotines, as they should, I hope maybe moments like this move me a little further back in line.
Sounds good. I wish
Boris and
so
Donald to the front, please.
Absolutely agree with you there, of course. Do you know, one day we'll ask you to come and actually talk to us here. Maybe that would be possible one day, and then we can go down the pub.
I would love it. I love London. I miss London. I miss going to the record stores in London.
I like your vinyl collection there, and there's a lot of vinyl around here.
Thank you.
You know, there's one thing we do at the end of talks that we love and we want to show our appreciation, and we turn our microphones off. Oh, sorry, I mean, we turn our mute buttons off, turn our microphones on. We like to do a very old-fashioned thing, which is give a round of applause, an actual round of applause. So come on, everybody, put your mics on and give a round of applause to Mike.
Thank you so much, everybody. You know, it's weird being stuck here at home and, you know, spending like the last 14 months without human contact. And just the fact that we can see people still in other parts of the world, even behind these little screens, means that, you know, there's some good. We've built some good things. And, you know, so we are capable of reaching out to each other and making connections and, you know, shutting up and listening once in a while and letting other people talk. And by the way, I want to give a big round of applause to Hal for what he brought up, because I know that was difficult and that was brave, and he gets a round of applause for that. Let's do it.
Well on, Howard.
And everybody else in their questions was just amazing. What a good, you got a good maybe, hey, you know, maybe once you settle your Boris situation and the US goes to shit again, maybe you can sneak me into the UK and I can teach there. Because we are going to shit again. Trust me.
Yeah, I know. Your call for a guillotine is proving quite popular in the chat box.
They're so easy to make.
Okay, well, let's get we got quite an interesting bunch of leaders up there. I don't know what's happened to the world, you know. I was brought up in a world that was idealistic and we thought everything was going to be marvelous, and it all went.
That's because we weren't paying attention, Clive. You know, we thought the world was pretty great because we weren't paying attention to what we were doing to other people in the world. It's always been shit for a lot of people, except those people rarely look like us. I think the world hasn't gotten any worse. We just, you know, other people have just started speaking up and we have started listening to them just a little bit, but the world has not gotten worse. We're just not hiding it as well.
Yeah, I'll take that one. Great. Okay. Thanks again, Mike. It's been absolutely incredible. I know everyone really has enjoyed this, and we'll be in touch with you and hopefully see you soon.
Thanks, everybody. This was fantastic. I really appreciate it. It's great to meet all of you. Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye for now. Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody. Absolutely awesome. Have the night off. Good to see you. See you soon.